So I want to do another video on the art operation. I think I've already done a few and talked about it a lot, but I don't think it's been, I don't feel that I've been understood on this. So for whoever's interested, we're going to go over the anatomy of an aesthetic problem, the philosophy of the art operation. I took some notes. I'm not just going to read through them. It's just I have trouble these days. A lot of my work's the practice is like nonlinear, so I spend hours in nonlinear like loops in a sort of algorithmic composition and iterative evolutionary, hyperreflexive design, reflexive design. So I'm a pro at it, so like it's okay. But like so when I come to do videos, sometimes my thoughts sort of wander about. So this will keep me on track. So yeah. So what we're talking about are mature art operations. And I define art simply and functionally as the finding of elegant solutions to aesthetic problems. I mean, that's been like that for years, and I've heard others even say that. I don't know who said it first, it doesn't matter. So like, you have different, like, you can define problems in different ways depending on the domain of application, a design problem, whatever, aesthetic problem, engineering problem. I want to talk about the anatomy of the problem itself, but of an aesthetic problem. So it carries a unique friction. In a pure art operation, the aesthetic problem is the entire battleground. Now we're going to get to our first, there's going to be two little equations there. I'm not a mathematician there, and they're not very complex. I think a 5-year-old can understand them if I explain it to them. So the art operation works by establishing a rigorous formal method of function. The function f of p equals s. That maps a deeply understood problem space to an elegant solution space. Problem space, function of problem space, outputs the input variables of the problem, your definition of your problem statement. The function of that produces your solutions. The function takes each facet of the problem, computes, generates, and distills a corresponding design vector. Now, to make it easy to understand for people, because I don't want to be complicated, I think simplicity is key here. The anatomy of a problem, we're going to talk about Cervantes or whatever, and Don Quixote, to see a function in action. So long before his masterpiece materialized, Cervantes came face to face with a profound aesthetic problem. How do you take a character archetype from a completely different era, a medieval knight-errant, and transpose him into a contemporary, gritty, early modern Spanish setting without losing the romantic essence of the myth? So we have the problem space. So the boundaries of his problem space are defined by stark contradictions. There's the chronological friction I was talking about earlier, that the aesthetic problem carries unique friction. So the chronological friction in this case, and there's a whole taxonomy of problems, of aesthetic problems that I'll get to. So the chronological friction, the high fantasy, chivalric or whatever. Like, anyways, the codes of I don't know how to pronounce it. 12th century clashing with the economic realism of 16th century Spain. The narrative barrier. If the world is magical, it's just another knight-errant story. If the world is purely mundane, the knight is simply a madman losing his poetic weight. So I was saying like that, when he has to design a concept of Don Quixote, the novel, because the solution is the problem is, and in the instance of his actual novel, there could be like any number of countless people could solve the problem in different ways. He could have written a sequel. He could have rehashed the problem and all that. So before writing a single line of prose, he needed a core design concept. He found it by defining the problem not as a historical mismatch, but as a psychological tension. So we get back to tension here. His concept: a contemporary man who genuinely believes he is a medieval knight, projecting his internal mythos onto an indifferent modern landscape. Solution space. The elegant resolution. Cervantes' function computed an elegant solution by transforming the fiction into an engine of the narrative. The windmills became giants, the coarse country inns became majestic castles. By solving the aesthetic problem through the lens of psychological delusion, he did not just bypass the chronological barrier, he used it to invent the modern novel. The solution space yielded a framework where both the harsh reality and the beautiful ideal could coexist perfectly. So I was going to get into a contemporary case study. It's a I'll say it. I didn't want to say because I've actually done experiments with this, but I won't get into it. With the portrait of Picasso, like how would you paint the portrait of Picasso in June 2026? So you got the problem variables, the art operational function, the solution space, but I won't get into that because I might actually do that. So there's certain things I don't share with the world before I do it. So the taxonomy of art problems, the typological friction, taking an established form, archetype, or genre from one domain era to transposing into an uninviting or foreign environment. So yeah, it's not important. Like I have the table of the problem types, the core definition, operational objective, classic example, like Cervantes placing a 12th century knight into a realistic 16th century landscape, painting a portrait of Picasso in 2026 under the shadow of the Picasso succession. You could have an app with like clumsy typography or chaotic alignments that frustrate users, or different things. So got the elegant resolution. So we'll go back to the anatomy of the aesthetic problem, general theory of art operation. The operational mandate, why the art operation exists. And I'll be posting more on this. It's just I have to make a video of this, like for the record. The art operation exists because human experience is inherently plagued by structural, emotional, and spiritual friction. We encounter barriers, questions, and unsatisfactory situations that stand between our current reality and an ideal state of harmony. So you say that, like I was saying, the art operation resolves aesthetic friction, the profound alienation felt when human environments, objects, interfaces, or expressions lack formal elegance, unity, and truth. The ultimate humanistic service of an art operation is the preservation and calibration of human consciousness in a way. Without elegant solutions to aesthetic problems, society experiences a slow, numbing decay of its perceptual apparatus. And I'll talk later about how we've lost taste, basically. People don't have taste anymore. And I was talking to someone about that yesterday. The art operation serves as a cognitive anchor, translating the chaotic raw data of an era into structured, balanced, and vital forms that remind humanity of its capacity for order and beauty. So the mechanics of the art function, problem to solution, come back to this, and the redundancies on purpose. So I could get to a quote from at the beginning, the moral of synergetics. He explains why repetition exists, basically. So an art operation, as established, an art operation operates as a precise formal function that processes a defined problem space to generate an elegant solution space. That's the function. P is the raw, unrefined aesthetic problem loaded with contradictions, historical baggage, and technical constraints. F is the operational methodology, the rigorous framework of processing, filtering, and structuring unique to the practitioner. S is the output, the finished artifact, layout, system, or novel, in the case of Cervantes, that stands as an elegant solution. Design concept. I said I wouldn't read my notes, but it's true. Anyway, so now we've got another little universal calculus. A equals RT in the temporal axis. So here you have art is what is relevant for all times. Let it sink in. If art is that which is relevant for all time, it must possess a structural universality. We can formalize the actual production of art, A, through a second overarching equation that contextualizes our operational function within the dimension of time, T. A equals R of T. Here A represents the vital art production, which is intrinsically bound to a temporal relevance function, R of T. The relevance function acts as a dual axis anchor and must simultaneously anchor the work in the absolute archive of history and the hyperprecise currency of the present moment. So you have the past is important, the universality, the archive, the mastery of prior art, deep historical research, timeless formal laws, and there's the currency or the currentness, saturated media landscape, contemporary friction, the different input variables, like is temporal, like you have to like look at the archive, like so there's two intense phases of the research. Phase A is navigating the archive. So before an operator can solve a contemporary problem, they must rigorously examine the archive. What did the masters do? How did Cervantes solve the problem of narrative displacement? How did Picasso solve the problem of representing three-dimensional weight on a flat two-dimensional canvas? Researching prior art is not an act of imitation, it is an act of engineering compliance. To ignore the archive is to reinvent the wheel badly. The masters left behind blueprints of formal laws, symmetry, asymmetry, tension, color theory, and structural economy that are hardwired into human neurobiology. The archive gives the work its universality, ensuring that a viewer centuries from now can decode its elegance. Again, relevant for all time. A Rembrandt, even a Warhol is as relevant now as it was then. So, phase 2 or B, dissecting the currency, the present moment. Conversely, the work must be hyper-tuned to the exact temporal currency or currentness of the present, precise historical moment it is birthed into. The currency of the moment dictates the specific texture of this problem space, the other formula or equation. If a work relies only on the archives, however, it becomes dead academicism. If it relies only on currency, it becomes disposable commercial content. So true art, A equals R of T, occurs when the deep universal laws of the archive are used to pierce right through the chaotic noise of the present moment. So I won't finish my notes, but like the crisis of taste is the impetus for the operator. I'll go over it really quickly. So historically, the primary catalyst for an art operation has always been the problem of taste. Taste is the highly trained perceptive faculty that allows an individual to differentiate between what is formally excellent, balanced, and true versus what is chaotic, derivative, and deceptive. Throughout history, and art operations have been launched as defensive countermeasures when taste begins to decay. Renaissance workshops, the Bauhaus, the classic design movements were all intentional operations designed to inject order into eras sliding into aesthetic vulgarity. The modern emergency. So the problem of taste has reached a civilizational crisis point. We live in an era characterized by an unprecedented loss of aesthetic discernment. The cultural landscape has been flattened by algorithms optimized for cheap engagement rather than formal excellence. Alarmingly, this rot has spread to professional artists and institutional gatekeepers who frequently confuse novelty for depth, shock value for subversion, true subversion, pastiche for mastery, algorithmic slop for human expression. And don't get me wrong, it's not all slop. When the ability to differentiate between good and bad art is lost, the threat is not merely visual or stylistic, it is deeply systemic and civilizational. The societal and civilizational risks of aesthetic decay. The principle of aesthetic contagion. How we build, paint, write, design interfaces directly shapes how we think, decide, and treat one another. Cheap, ugly, and disharmonious environments breed cheap, sloppy, and disharmonious thinking. So you have stages of civilizational decay, such the loss of discernment, structural sloppiness, institutional decay, and have different risks that are involved, like the death of truth. I'll skip the other ones there. So aesthetic harmony is the outer garment of truth. When a culture can no longer tell the difference between a deeply researched, systematically computed masterpiece like Cervantes' Don Quixote and a shallow imitation, it loses its grip on reality itself. Cynicism takes over. If everything is disposable content, nothing is sacred, nothing is true, and nothing is worth building to last. So if I apply it to my practice, at this point I've become like an aesthetic customs officer. Like I'm just checking the supply and like the logistics, like stuff passing through the port or whatever. And I'm the customs officer in the free port or whatever. I'm looking at containers of art, and I'm you know, so like I have my practice, you know, to combat, like, it's built precisely to combat civilizational drift by enforcing extreme formal discipline. So when a problem lands on my desk, whether it is a canvas, a structural layout, or a conceptual design challenge, my workflow must remain fiercely operational. Number 1, formulate the sharp problem statement. Isolate the friction. Define the exact boundaries of your problem space, of my problem space. Strip away vague desires and identify the core contradictions. Mine the absolute archive. Consult the masters. Look backward into the historical database. Extract the timeless formal laws utilized by those who face primitive versions of this exact problem type. 3, calibrate for 2026 currency and inject the present. Analyze the immediate cultural, technical, and psychological anxieties of the current month and year. Determine how the work will pierce through today's specific noise. 4, and lastly, execute the art function. Compute the resolution. Run the variables through your formal method F. Reject any solution that is merely a compromise or a pastiche. Push until you find the elegant resolution where form meets function seamlessly. S. Superman. By anchoring your practice in this formal theory, your art operation becomes an act of societal preservation. You are not simply decorating a broken world, or decorating walls for that instance, you know. You are actively computing the elegant frameworks required to keep human perception sharp, disciplined, and profoundly alive. So probably taking too much of your time. I'll leave it at that. If you want to know more about the art operation, you can go on my website, alexgagnon, GAGNON.com. That's my personal website. I'm everywhere else, Anti-Signal, on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Mastodon, on like Threads, on Instagram. I'm on YouTube under Alex Gagnon. I have Medium, Substack. I'm everywhere, and I publish different blogs all over WordPress, Blogger. I am very prolific, and I produce a lot of writing and a lot of artwork in three different disciplines: images, sounds, and words. And I've been doing it for 30 years. And if you don't think that this made sense, then there's nothing I can do. I've done. It almost brings me to tears. Like, I've done as much as is humanly possible to make my work simple and I think marketable. But somehow history's against me right now. I don't know what to say. It's discouraging, but I got my literature to keep me busy instead of getting the blues. So thanks for listening.